It's time for a look at the papers now, the press review with Deepti Kalaro, who's joined me on set. Welcome, Deepti.
Hi,
Let's start with Kerala. The women's protest at the Sabarimala temple in India. It continues to dominate headlines.
That's right, particularly because it did turn deadly. One man has been killed in those protests. This after two women entered the temple at dawn under police cover for the first time since a Supreme Court ruling lifted a ban on women of menstruating age from entering the temple. That was last year. Two women make it to Sabarimala, the Indian daily. The Hindu says on its front page. That decision, of course, sparking the anger of Hindu fundamentalists, including Prime Minister Narendra Modi's BJP party. Later this month, that court ruling will be appealed, according to temple authorities. The British daily, The Independent, reports women are not allowed into the temple for fear that they might tempt the temple's main deity, who's called Lord Ayyappa, who's celibate. So that's the reasoning behind it. This is interesting, though, because it kind of plays into the climate of pre-election. Indeed, India's national elections will take place in spring. Religion is shaping up to be a key influencer ahead of those votes, so much so that Narendra Modi himself addressed this controversy on Tuesday, saying it has more to do with, quote, religious tradition than gender politics.
All right, now moving on to the United States now, where the U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders has spoken out about sexual harassment allegations in his own 2016 presidential campaign.
That's right. He's actually been forced to address these allegations after a New York Times report and an initial report by Politico came days after over 24 staffers from that 2016 campaign signed a letter seeking a meeting with Bernie Sanders and top officials of his campaign. They allege demeaning treatment, sexual harassment, and unfair pay during their time in that campaign. As he tries to build a support for a 2020 bid, he's been forced to address these allegations of sexual harassment. The apparent failure of addressing them initially is coming back to haunt him. Staffers, for instance, spoke of makeshift accommodations while on the road, where they had to share hotel rooms with unfamiliar male colleagues. Some allegations are even directed against more senior members of his campaign. For the New York Times, at least, it's clear that Sanders is no longer an outsider going into 2020, and that means that he will have to grapple with the effects of the Me Too movement.
All right. Now, moving on now to Netflix, that is facing controversy over its recent decision to pull an episode of a satirical comedy show that mocked Saudi Arabia.
That show is Patriot Act. I'm not sure if you've seen it, Shona. It features.
I've heard of it.
You've heard of it. It features comedian Hassan Minhaj, and in one of his recent episodes, he mocked the Saudi response to the death of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Well, that episode was pulled from broadcast in Saudi Arabia, which claims it violates the all-encompassing anti-cybercrime laws. The episode, bizarrely, is still available on YouTube in Saudi Arabia, a point that was not missed by Minhaj himself. On Twitter, he said, I quote, clearly the best way to stop people from watching something is to ban it, make it trend online, and then leave it up on YouTube. He's urging people to donate to the relief efforts for those in Yemen. But for one writer in Esquire, it raises a question of how streaming platforms should respond to censorship. For this writer, Netflix was caving to Saudi demands at a time where it continues to develop original political content. It needs to be, quote, prepared to defend its artistic expression everywhere and anywhere it might be challenged.
All right, well, moving on now to the last story, unfortunately, of the day. The UK chain Travelodge has revealed its 2018 list of the weirdest things that guests leave behind. Ooh, I don't know if I want to know this list.
You'll never really understand this list. Let me give you a few of them. A replica of Meghan Markle's wedding dress, a 5-foot teddy bear made of popcorn, a life-size scarecrow, a gallon of water from Loch Ness, and a lot of animals apparently have been left in Travelodge's hotels in 2018. A blue-eyed cockatoo called Brexit, 2 Persian cats called Moet and Chandon, and 3 butterfly tailfish called Kim, Courtney, and Chloe.
I mean, these objects are so strange.
They're very, very bizarre.
You would imagine that their owners missed them once they were gone, right?
I suppose so. Or they might have noticed that they'd forgotten to take them out of the room in the first place.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Deepti there with the press review. That's it for now.